All right. Welcome to the situation. We are following up on August 20th, CM Punk's debut. Well, his return to wrestling and his debut to AEW. I'm sure all of you guys have seen it. If not, I will link at least his debut, or if you will, or at least as him doing his introducing himself, his introduction, I should say. I'll link that down in the description for you guys to check out. We're going to go over 3 videos brought to us by Jim and Brian that talk essentially about everything that was going on around this. That was a pretty exciting weekend. It was really interesting, and it was actually pretty cool to hear a lot of people's takes from different wrestling organizations. Certain people, at least from the WWE, might end up actually getting punished for some of the stuff they said because people just started deleting their tweets left and fucking right, because that's a thing. But we'll see. It was kind of interesting to see how people reacted to it, and people who were salty or came across as salty, those who were just toting company lines, because that is a thing. Wrestling is just as much political as it is physical. So it's a thing we'll talk about, I'm sure, as this goes along. Anyway, 3 videos, all by Jim Cornette and Brian. The links will be down in the description. First video, Jim Cornette on Roman Reigns' comments about CM Punk. I'm sure that's going to be salty. Second video, it's probably not going to be salty, but we'll see. Second video, Jim Cornette on AEW's current momentum, which is, I guess we'll just see how long they keep it. You know what I'm saying? We'll see how that plays out and how what their plans are moving forward. And then the third and final video is Jim Cornette reviews, I should say, CM Punk's AEW debut in Chicago on Rampage, which is kind of our main course, if you will, or that's our main event. So a couple undercards, then we'll get to our main event. It should be fun. And let me not hold you guys off much longer. Let's just go ahead and get into it. I'll see you guys in just a second.
All righty.
Speaking of flat statements,
Roman Reigns has made some lately, hasn't he?
yeah, well, I don't know how flat they were, but they certainly are getting a lot of attention.
People are up in arms about his opinions on various people, such as CM Punk, I believe.
Apparently, he did an interview with Ariel Helwani. I think it's on BT Sport. That's what it says here. And I didn't watch the entire interview, but clearly several clips went viral pretty quickly. Several quotes went viral. And we have those here. We have a little bit of audio if you want to hear it, because I think the setup is important so that it's not just...
We want everything in context here. We don't want to just blurt out anything without giving proper contextual meaning to the thing.
Right. And we'll get to Moxley in a little bit. I wrestle without contextual meaning. But we're going to first talk about the quote about...
Wait a minute.
What?
That should be his new hometown, from no contextual meaning. John Moxley. All right, yeah, go ahead.
But here is a little bit, just so we could review it and put it in the proper context. Ariel Helwani interviewing Roman Reigns.
Getting back to John, one thing that has been talked about a lot, the aforementioned CM Punk talked about it a lot as well, about these guys who would leave and come back and get the big spot, right? They get the main event of WrestleMania and then they leave and come back. How do you feel about that? You're a constant. He's been gone. He's coming back. Who knows if he sticks around past SummerSlam? Are you okay with that sort of thing, that sort of arrangement? The guys who over the last 2 decades or so have left and come back, while the guys like you are in Tulsa and Charlotte and God knows where tomorrow night.
Well, besides the fact that
I was going to say, I mean, to be honest with you, that's what they're the big names that take these breaks, I should say, or these leaps of absence. Those are the guys that are the draw. And to be honest with you, even though more often than not, those people are going to be the ones that are going to be put over, certainly. It also, whoever they're working with, it's supposed to also raise their profile. Now, does that always happen? Not necessarily, but that's what the situation is. And you would think someone like Roman Reigns, no shitting on Roman Reigns or anything, who has been pushed to the moon multiple times over, and they still couldn't get him over and whatnot until they kind of just let him do him and let him embrace the hate. And I think that's the most over he's been, is when he was a heel. Or as a heel, I should say, pays dividends. I don't think he has. I don't think Roman Reigns really has any room to talk. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's entitled to his opinion like anybody else. But let's be honest, he was shoved down people's throats for fucking years. And it wasn't working. It wasn't. So it's not like his cousin The Rock, who tried the heel shit. It was entertaining, certainly. Well, they tried to push him as a face. They gave him the heel situation. Like I said, it was kind of entertaining. Well, it was entertaining, I suppose. And then they let him be him, which is kind of not really a heel. He's Austin, but he's like the Miami version of Austin, if you think about it. That's a terrible example, but we'll go with that for now, and I'll take whatever shit that comes with it. But you know what I mean? Like, they let him be him, just like they let Austin be Austin. And so it wasn't about he was a heel or a face. It's just a matter of, hey, I'm doing me, and if you're in my way, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I need to do to get you the fuck up out of my way. That's essentially how it works. I think with Reigns, I guess they were desperate to just get a face out there to elevate someone. I don't know if John Cena was trying to kind of rev down or downshift so he can move on to other things sooner, or whatever the case may be, but they tried to push Roman Reigns super fucking hard. And let's be honest, in like 10 years, maybe even 12 years, once Roman Reigns' time has come and gone or whatever, they're going to bring him back for the big spots and stuff too. You know what I mean? It's what they do. It's kind of what it's an old tactic that they've done in wrestling, but it's certainly something that's one of Vince McMahon's go-tos. Now, given the situation that Hunter is going, or Triple H is going through currently, who knows what his position is going to be, let's say by the end of the year. But if he still ends up getting the greatest prize, besides Stephanie, depending on who you want to speak to on that one, of actually having control over the company, so to speak, we'll see if he decides to change up or if he don't. You know what I mean? We'll see if he tries to change his tactics up, I should say, or if he decides to go his own way. Clearly with NXT, it looked like he was trying to go the AEW route, and for whatever reason, it didn't pan. But it's an old tactic. That's the point of bringing guys in after a long hiatus. It's just what they do. But at the same time, though, too, it's getting, I don't know if I'd say it's outdated, but you can't do it forever. You know what I'm saying? Like, what you saw with CM Punk was something special. It's not going to work like that for everybody. John Cena got a huge pop not long ago when he came back. But like I said, it's not going to last like that forever. Eventually, they're going to have to switch up, which is something that Vince should have done over a decade ago, if not longer.
Completely set him up with that question there.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember CM Punk? I believe the story was he had a problem. Was it when The Rock came back that The Rock all of a sudden got, I mean, again, as he should, he's The Rock, got elevated to the top spot with guys who were there every week, like CM Punk.
Yes, and I believe there were comments, and I don't know whether that it was legitimate irritation, whether it was intention of doing an angle or a little bit of both, trying to capitalize and make chicken salad out of chicken shit. But I believe he said something about that. Yes.
So again, there's the question, and none of the quotes have contained that question. So there's the question, and here is part of Roman's answer right directly after the question.
I can see it from both perspectives, but I think you said it before, you know, the high tide raises all the boats, right? Everybody benefits. So I do think there's that strange threshold, but I think, man, those statements are coming from bitter people, you know, who possibly thought they were better than they really were. When it comes down to it, CM Punk was not as good or as over as a John Cena. Wasn't as good or as over and moved the needle like The Rock. It was just what it was. From a full-time performer, I understand the frustration and wanting more. But like I said before, you got to take it. I'm a full-time performer. But I've done everything that needs to be done to stay in this position, to be in this position, to continue to make the opportunity for myself to be in a main event of SummerSlam against a John Cena. And if anybody ever comes along to try to push me out of that, you know, scenario, I'm a fight like hell to keep, you know, the ground that I've made. So
Well, there's the crux of what he had to say following
Well, I don't know if I can really say that he made that ground. I mean, he certainly has paved it, you know what I'm saying, for himself, or he's asphalted it over, or whatever the case may be. But I can't say that he actually laid down the groundwork. A lot of that was laid down for him. Like I said, they've pushed him hard as shit. John Cena, to some degree, was pushed hard too, but he was able to make it work. I think honestly, The Rock just got over. I think once they let The Rock be The Rock, he just, or you know what I mean. Once they let him be himself, he was able to get himself over. You know what I mean? I don't know if you can say that for John Cena per se. I'm not saying that John Cena doesn't have charisma and doesn't have the attributes that would make him, because he's child friendly, right? Like when you think about the PG era, he was a good fit. I won't say he's perfect, but I would say he was a good fit for that era. But even still, I don't know if I would say John Cena was more over than The Rock. I don't know if I can honestly say that. I really don't think so. And to say that CM Punk, I'm not sure if I'd say that CM Punk doesn't have a reason to be bitter, because he went through a lot of bullshit. But then again, a lot of people go through a lot of bullshit. But with that said, he went through a lot of bullshit, and then a lot of the backstage politics, which has all been well documented. So if he feels a certain type of way, he feels a certain type of way. I think CM Punk is just another example of someone else who got himself over and then got out. And if he feels a certain type of way about how he was treated, so be it. In a couple of years, well, maybe not a couple, let's say in a few years. In a few years, you may end up seeing a Roman Reigns interview where he talks about, you know, maybe I got pushed a little earlier than I should. Maybe I had a lot of heat with the boys in the back because of, you know, what they were trying to put me in, and I wasn't ready for it, and I wasn't ready to shoulder that responsibility. Sooner than later, you may eventually hear that from him. So I hope he thinks about this particular moment when he thinks about that a few years down the line. Not trying to shit on Roman Reigns or anything. I get what he's trying to say or whatnot, and he certainly worked hard to try to fit the position that he's been shoved into, right? But at the same time, though, too, everybody has their grievances, and I don't know if he just doesn't know fully about what, you know, CM Punk was going through. Maybe he doesn't want to throw any shade because, like I said, CM Punk or Reigns has been pushed so hard that other people got sidestepped or maybe even not railroaded, but certainly shelved temporarily so they could make good for him. I mean, it's a tough spot to be in. You know what I'm saying? That's a tough spot to speak on. You know what I mean? But like I said, we'll see what his take is in, 5-6 years. You know what I mean? It might get different. You know what I mean? Right now, he's the figure. If you think about it, he's the crown piece of the WWE right now. So obviously he has to tote company lines. You know what I'm saying? At the same time, though, too, there's a level of realism to this. It's not like people aren't naive about the politics that go on behind the scenes. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Like I say, he's doing right now he's doing what he has to do because that's what's best for the company. And that's what's best for the position, his position. But in a few years, let's see what he really thinks.
Those are inflammatory comments, aren't they? Holy mackerel. How dare he? No, everybody, the tweet that was tweeted out was basically Roman Reigns just saying, these statements are coming from people who thought they were better than they were. CM Punk wasn't as good or as over as John Cena. He didn't move the needle like The Rock. That was the quote in the tweet. So everybody's, he wasn't just asked a question about, which flavor of ice cream he likes and started in on Cena or started in on the CM Punk. The name was mentioned. I don't think it's inflammatory to anybody to say, well, they didn't move the needle like The Rock because who fucking did except for Austin. And I think he's got to say CM Punk wasn't as good or as over as John Cena because John Cena's the guy he's wrestling at SummerSlam. But it wasn't like he went out of his way to use this platform to, let me talk about a motherfucker or a couple of motherfuckers that I don't particularly like. It was a response to a question, and he's working to hype his match at SummerSlam while at the same time trying not to, as they say, insult anybody's intelligence, but he doesn't want to fucking talk about wrestling being a work either, so he talks about the fight that he's made to keep his spot and etc., and he doesn't have to come and go like these other guys. But this was not inflammatory. It's a guy that works for the WWE selling his main event match and responding to an interviewer that mentioned a guy's name that used to be there.
Did you ever hear who CM Punk wanted the original Shield to be? Remember, the Shield ended up being, of course, Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, now Jon Moxley, and Roman Reigns. CM Punk, he was in the mix. That was all about him. He was in the mix with that angle. He originally recommended recommended a different version of the Shield. Did you ever hear what that was?
I did, but I can't recall it now, and hopefully you can.
Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Chris Hero.
That's right, Hero. Because Hero was a tremendous performer at that time.
That's when that's actually a great point. That's when as you know, or most people know, CM Punk was the one who actually came up with the idea of the Shield. Hunter ends up swooping that idea, keeps two of CM Punk's original choices, and then they put Roman. And I can't remember if it was Triple H himself or Vince said to throw Roman Reigns in, and they were going to use that as the build up to eventually get him to where he is. I mean, like I said, it's political. A lot of it's political. To be honest, especially at WWE, which is what a lot of people got sick about. But what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Good ideas are taken all the fucking time. So make of that what you will. But I'm not too surprised at that. Because if you have too many good ideas, especially as one of the boys, eventually to anybody, not just Hunter, but to anybody, eventually people are going to feel threatened. And they will eventually try to move against you. So even though CM Punk may have not have, I wouldn't say get his way, because at the end of the day, he was still able to make his way, so he could have his way. I mean, sometimes you just take a loss. It wasn't that big of a deal. Who knows how the Shield could have been with CM Punk back in the day? Maybe it could have been great. You know what I'm saying? Maybe, but then again, maybe it could have just had a bunch of infighting, and they would have, or people would have gotten into other people's ears, and they would have imploded on itself. Who could say?
I haven't seen him lately.
But you can say that it was a good enough idea for someone to steal it, or someone to commandeer it.
I'm sure he probably still is, but he was motivated. He had changed his body. He was at the best I'd seen him around that time period, and they never did a goddamn thing with him. Well, there you go.
There's Roman Reigns' controversial.
I mean,
what was more controversial, his statement or Ariel Helwani's question?
I don't even think Ariel Helwani. Hey, lady. I sound like Bill Apter doing Jerry Lewis now. I don't think Ariel Helwani's question was particularly inflammatory either. Did he lead him to say something about CM Punk? Maybe, because he mentioned his name, and he, is obviously aware that might get some views, but it wasn't. It was simply a question of, you're wrestling a guy that's come back after he's gone to Hollywood and he's done this and done that. People in the past have said that they resent these guys coming back every so often when they're there all the time. How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
But Roman Reigns is smart enough to know that John Cena coming back, I think he botched the phrase, a rising tide lifts all boats, but who doesn't want a fucking movie star that used to actually be a professional wrestler and still is, for that matter? Whether it's The Rock or John Cena on the card. You don't want David Arquette. He wasn't a movie star or a goddamn wrestler, but a wrestler that became an actual movie star. You would want them on the card whenever you could get them. Or an icon like The Undertaker that for a number of years had one big match a year in him on the big show when it counted. Why wouldn't you want that? Because you're going to make more money of being on that guy's card than main eventing in a phone booth.
Well, he's not wrong. Sorry, I'm not sure why the video was silent there, but he's, it was, yet again, I'm anxious to see what Roman Reigns will think in the future. You know what I'm saying? Because right now he's in position, so you got to tote the company line, and you want to do what's best for obviously your position and those who are around you. At the same time, one day he's going to be in that position too. You know what I mean? And at the same time, as I said earlier on in this, not everybody, though everybody should benefit if you're in a position to work with one of these guys who's coming back after a hiatus. A lot of times that's sadly not the case. You know what I'm saying? We've seen plenty of guys who were WWE champion and ended up getting squashed because someone else was coming back, having a triumphant return, if you will, and just completely killed their run just so they could put this guy over. Not that they even needed to be put over. You know, like that, like for example, well, not an example, but you know what I mean? It's a moment that didn't need to happen. When Brock Lesnar went up against The Undertaker. Like, Brock didn't need to get over. He was already over. So killing the streak is basically what I'm referring to. It served no purpose. It made no sense. It really didn't. I've always kind of looked at it as, did Vince feel a certain type of way? Or is this one of those situations where people talk about, hey, Vince was holding on to the reins a little too long and he should have relinquished them? Who could say? But killing the streak was a terrible idea to put Brock Lesnar over when Brock Lesnar is Brock fucking Lesnar. He doesn't need to be put over. There's never a question about that. Brock is going to bring in money. That's what he does. You know what I mean? The UFC wouldn't have kept him as long if he didn't. Not to say that he couldn't put in work, but you know what I mean? It's one of those things. I don't know. But like I said, my point of all of this, though, as it pertains to this whole segment, is it's political. It's always political. At the end of the day. The majority of of sports entertainment, let's say that. The majority of sports entertainment is political. When it was wrestling, you know what I mean? You had a little bit of, it's obviously still political, but you know what I'm saying? You have to perform. You have to get over with the audience. You have to do, there's so much more that encompasses it. Now, there's so many backstage dealings and backstabbing and dudes getting maneuvered in ways that, or being utilized in ways that they probably shouldn't because someone feels threatened by them or someone believes they know better than the actual performer themselves, that, you know, people just fall into the dragnet. And then when Reigns is in a situation where he's going to be on a really big stage, he's going to be up there with John Cena, which is a very big opportunity, which yet again will only solidify and get him even more over, depending on how this pans out. And then you have CM Punk, or the ghost of CM Punk, still lingering in the background, that it's going to be a topic. I don't think the guy necessarily set Roman Reigns up. I just think CM Punk was a hot topic, so they brought it all up. They brought the situation in, and he curved it in right. What are you going to do? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get into our second video. Jim Cornette on AEW's current momentum. Here we go.
An interesting time. And now, of course, the next big event is AEW will be in Newark, followed by them in Queens, New York. We all assume the debut of Daniel Bryan, and it's now being reported there's another major acquisition for AEW. Some people think it may be Ric Flair. Some people think it may be something else, something containing an active wrestler maybe. But like you said, and we've been talking about, there's a lot of momentum on AEW's side right now. And last night with CM Punk to hit a home run, this has now become the most interesting period of time in wrestling. Much more interesting, I think, than even 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah. And Adam Cole will, the AEW fans will lap him up if he chooses to make that decision. And the only I'm afraid that Adam will be too friendly with the clown circle and get involved in that, just because it's the same generation and they're friends with him. So we might have seen, if Adam goes to AEW, we might have seen the best of Adam Cole already.
If Adam goes to AEW, he will most likely be aligned or be involved with some of the Young Bucks goofiness, because that's just what he will do.
And that's why I'm hoping that they will break the bank to make him stay in NXT, just for the optics of the thing. So we'll still get to see Adam Cole performing as well as Adam Cole has. Punk, I don't have a problem thinking that, because he has a lot of backbone and standards. Bryan Danielson's going to be interesting. because he just loves wrestling, and he's a great, wonderful human being.
Okay, let me jump in real fast. So as it pertains to the Adam Cole situation, I get it. Like, he does have a lot of history with the Bucks, and he's buddy with them, and so on and so forth. I also feel like they're gonna want to. I don't know if he'll be completely part of the antics. We'll see. I mean, that kind of remains to be seen. But I think they're gonna want to elevate Cole in some way, shape, or form, because clearly the guy has a lot of talent, and you'd be wasting even more potential talent by just kind of, throwing him in with the goofball shit, more or less, if that's how you want to view it. So I don't know. I'd like to think that they'll do the right thing and let Adam Cole be Adam Cole, but we'll see. I don't want to completely write him off like, yeah, we've seen the best of him and that's it. I believe that he still has a lot of time, and he can still shake shit up and he can still do really, really well, as long as he doesn't fall into all of the silliness, if you will. So we'll see. Daniel Bryan, well, like I said, we'll get into more of the Punk stuff as we move along with this. Daniel Bryan, I think it's going to be like dream match after dream match with the guy. I'm more worried about him burning himself out or making himself so much more vulnerable to injury than him succumbing to any like zaniness or anything like that. Because like it's been said, there's going to be a lot of guys on the roster that he hasn't had a chance to wrestle against, and this is going to be his chance to do it. And it's essentially having the most lovable dog in the world, instead of just going to the dog park, if you will, having a whole fucking field to himself. You know what I'm saying? To go ahead and exhaust himself to his content. And that's what I think I'm more worried about. He's taken a lot of bumps and had sustained a lot of injuries in WWE. I'm just hoping that someone kind of can pace him a little bit if he goes to AEW. That's my biggest concern more than anything. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not out there to be malicious. He's not out there to fuck anybody over. He just wants to have a good time. The problem is, will the body be able to keep up with the heart? You know what I'm saying? Like, his love for the business is so much. Can the body continue to sustain what it's going to require for him to do it the way he wants to do it? And not to say that Daniel Bryan or Bryan Daniels, or whatever they're going to call him, can't tone it down. But then if he downshifts, right, then it's not necessarily the Bryan that we're used to seeing. So that's I think one of my main concerns. But we'll see. Time will tell. I wish the best to him either which way.
So I'm wondering, will he be more charitable and work with these guys and do their shit just because it's fun and he's getting paid, or will he demand professionalism? And in that case, it could go either way.
Talking about AEW's momentum and talking about the CM Punk promo and that moment last night, we've talked about this in the past, but things changed last night. Do you think any other guys, to throw a name out there, as ridiculous as it sounds, do you think someone like The Rock sees something like that and says, wow, that's amazing. That moment would have never happened in WWE, or they would have messed it up, or they would have sent up at the very end some job guy to get beat up. They would have completely messed it up. Do you think any guys at that high level see this and go, I kind of wish I could do something there?
Well, okay. See, I didn't know where your question was going. At first, I thought when you mentioned The Rock's name, like, will he ever entertain the thought of going there? I think he sat there, if he did watch it, or if he sees it, or whatever, he will say.
He watched it.
Okay, well, the guy's a fucking, movie star. He might have had to DVR it and watch it this afternoon. We've even done that, and we're not as busy as The Rock. But the point is, he's going to see it because he likes the wrestling business. He likes the old wrestling business as well as the modern wrestling business. So I think he's going to say that was special, and he probably will say to himself that probably was done better there than it would have been in the WWE or whatever. I agree with everything you just said, except he's never going to think, wow, could I do something there? It's never, not The Rock, because if Vince, who is made him millions and millions of dollars can possibly entice him to come and work with his family member, Roman Reigns, on a WrestleMania that could be the biggest ever. And he'll do a family member and a favor. That's the way you'll get The Rock back in the ring. He's not, and I'm not knocking AEW when I say this, he's not going to entertain doing anything else. He wouldn't even go back to the WWE probably for any more than one or two or three things that he might really want to do, or a person he might want to work with. I would think Reigns is at the top of the list. So no, before anybody gets going crazy, no, The Rock is not going to go to AEW. The Rock is probably, except for one match, not coming back to the WWE anymore, and even that's not certain.
And that's a fair point, because there's not too much that The Rock wants to do or needs to do or feels that he has to do as it pertains to sports entertainment. I'm just going to call it what it is. As it pertains to sports entertainment, there's just not much. You know what I'm saying? He's had a lot of opportunities. He took advantage of all of them, right? He put people over. He was put over himself. He's made tremendous amount of money. And even more important than the money is that he's made the right connections, and he's had the right opportunities that is culpable to his talent. Meaning that The Rock just being content with being The Rock and just, being one of these guys who just does wrestling and that's it, was never his scope. He was always, and plenty of the old timers have said this, he's always been way more talented than that. He has all of those opportunities because of wrestling, but his talent eclipses what he does in wrestling. But The Rock has never forgotten that. And so he's paid his dues. And at this particular point, as Jim said, if he comes back, he's only going to come back to do something for a family member, or maybe there's another favor there may be a random favor that Vince needs from him, or whatever the case may be, and he'll come back and pay his dues because he is loyal like that. But other than that, that's it. I'm not saying that he's done with wrestling per se, or sports entertainment or whatever. I just think that he's done everything he needs to do. He owns his name, or he owns the rights to his name, his trademark and all of that. Vince gave all that to him. If I remember the interview correctly, he gave all that to him willingly. All he had to do was ask, and that's what he did, and he got it. Vince has given him everything, but Vince will never say that The Rock didn't give 200% or whatever the case may be. So it's very much one of the few fair stories, or at least fair stories that we know of as it pertains to the exchange, as it pertains to WWE. As for AEW, there's no need to. There's no need from an AEW standpoint. I know that sounds hard to believe, but run with me on this. There's no real need for The Rock in an AEW standpoint, or an AEW situation, and vice versa. It's a situation that doesn't really benefit neither one of them. Just because where The Rock has come from and where his loyalties lie. And Tony Khan, for all of his money and everything else, are you really willing to spend that much of a grip just to bring him in for a few weeks, or maybe even a couple months if you're lucky, get him at one of your big events, and then he's gone again? We have to look at short term. We have to look at the long term investment or the amount of money, I should say, that you're gonna have to put into this for the short term gains. It just doesn't hold water like that. With CM Punk, you're going to get a little bit more out of him. With whoever else they're planning on bringing in, you're going to get some real mileage. The Rock's interest isn't the same anymore. He's just doing so much now that he just wouldn't have the time to commit to it. And so I'm not speaking of it I'm not talking on The Rock's behalf from a point of ego. I'm just saying there's no need for him to make that commitment there. You know what I mean? And given what his time frame is and what he wants to do, there's no need or benefit for that to happen on either party's part, to be honest. That's just the way I look at it. I just don't see it. He just doesn't need that. He's as comfortable, not only comfortable, to be honest with you, but he's as well off as he's ever going to be. Like, The Rock has the type of money and the type of connections and resources that you just can't fuck up. You know what I mean? Not to say that a big scandal couldn't come around or whatever to hurt some of it, but that's not going to happen more than likely. Knock on wood, because I'm not trying to jinx anybody. But he's reaped the rewards and some. There's just no need to do it. I don't want to say that he would lower himself by going there. It just doesn't make sense.
Let's bring it back to the same planet we're on.
What about Batista?
Batista, I can see taking somebody's money, but I don't know if it would really be a big deal for AEW, because is Batista that fondly thought of by their faithful? They probably the AEW fans probably like him better in the Marvel movies than they did in the wrestling ring.
Probably,
which would warrant the big paycheck and probably warrant the opportunity in the short term if they have like a big program set up with someone else. So in a short term sort of way, yeah, Batista makes sense. In the long term, probably not.
And I think he's someone that you do have as a part-time guy. He can't be full-time. Unless it's full-time promo, he'll get injured right away.
Yeah.
But for a match or two, a couple of big matches, he's a major star now because of those Marvel films. That'd be a pretty big thing. But to my earlier question, the momentum. What do you think right now? How does AEW keep this going and not mess it up? And how do you think Vince McMahon's going to react to the momentum? Because they're pretending, and you know it's pretend. They're pretending like they're not concerned at all about AEW, and that is a complete lie.
Well, I don't actually think, to Vince, I don't think it was until last night. If anybody shows him last night, then I think he might go, shit. But I don't think he was lying because I don't think he's even given a shit to check into that much of what they're doing product wise. He gets people tell him what the business reports are, and they're still, even Uncle Dave admits that they're hundreds of miles away from the global revenue of the WWE. But momentum is definitely on their side, and they're going to get bigger because they're snatching up the people that he has let go, allowed to be free agents, or were lingering around out there that didn't want to go back to, the universe to begin with. So I think after he would see last night, he'd probably, shit. Something else to worry about. I don't think he's going to lose a ton of sleep over it. He likes to lose sleep anyway. But let's face it, just because Vince is 76 years old or whatever, Vince will not still be alive on this planet when or if AEW ever gets to within $300 or $400 million a year of the WWE's gross. I mean, that's just, it's not going to take place like that. So Vince wasn't lying before. He might be now if he says it after this, but still he's probably just going to try to yank a knot in some more people. He's probably going to just abuse Bruce verbally and say, what the fuck, pal? What are we doing?
Braun Strowman.
On here?
Braun Strowman, Vince McMahon, how are you? Where have you been?
Oh, God.
Come back.
And see, that's the thing. I don't know if Braun Strowman and Batista, guys like that, yes, they're movie stars.
Lesnar's the biggest one out there. Lesnar's the biggest one who's realistic out there.
It's only realistic if Vince didn't want to pay more money to come back. Vince will not.
Tony Khan could write that check. Vince has to think about it.
But listen to listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth. I don't know.
But where would Brock make the most money in the long term? Yes, Tony Khan can write that check. Here you go. What's your schedule, or what's the schedule that you want, and then let's move with it. With Vince thinking about it, what can Brock actually get out of that? He can probably he'll get the money he wants on the front end, plus God knows what he'll get on the back end, plus whatever continuing to build his profile and his exposure. There's way more. There is a lot to be gained, if you will, in the long term, with Vince McMahon thinking on if I'm willing to give you this money. Because yet again, it's not just Vince giving you this money up front. There's the back end, and then there's whatever money that can be gross in between, plus opportunities that can be built up. And that's the leverage, or maybe not leverage. What's the word I'm looking for? Maybe that's the Let me see here. Maybe that right there is an example of good of experience. Maybe not good, but experience where Tony Khan would kind of play off of impulse. Maybe that's the way of going about it. I was gonna say leverage, and it kind of makes sense from a leverage standpoint, but I think experience, at least right now, trumps. I think experience right now, for me, in this current situation, trumps using that over leverage. Just my initial thought.
Brock necessarily, he doesn't need money, but he would want Heyman, he'd want his comfort zone to just go in, make it easy as possible, do his shit twice a year, whatever the fuck. And if he got any offer from Tony Khan, he would go right straight back to Vince. And, you know, I don't see Vince letting Brock get away. I don't see Brock meaning as much in AEW as he does in WWE. Because even the AEW fans are less worried than any wrestling fans ever in the history of the world about a guy being a real badass or not.
But it's about now with Punk and Bryan, and you know, even some of the other guys. Well, not Andrade. He's kind of sucked so far. Yeah. But Aleister Black. Also, it's about stealing eyeballs. And you know what's more and more of these guys, and it's kind of that WCW model. Although you could probably do it in a much better way of just stealing the fans, stealing the eyeballs, and eventually people know about you, they know where you are, and they're watching you.
I know, but I don't think it would be a particularly good business move for either Brock or Tony Khan to go to AEW for the money that it would cost and what Tony would get out of it. And I don't think it'd be good for Brock because I don't know if he's a guy that would translate to that audience as well as some of these other people that are. I think he'd be a massive heel because people know he really hates them and he hates wrestling to begin with. And he doesn't do this he just does this for the money. So he'd get a lot of heat. But does he want to go into that? I mean, he's not even a fucking social guy in the WWE locker room. You think he wants to go into a goddamn romper room?
I can't wait to see him take a Meltzer driver.
Yes. And see, and so many of those things would not happen. So, yeah, no, I mean, we can't go crazy here. The Rock ain't going to happen. I don't see Brock happening. I think almost anybody else is up for debate.
Hey, one last thing about this. I said it last week that I loved AEW with a 1 hour format. 2 weeks in a row. Of course, it's a big one. I liked it. 1 hour, you're in and out. The Moxley match was short. They can't let things go too long.
Yeah.
I like the 1 hour Friday night show so far.
Could they do Wednesdays from 8 to 9 and 10 to 11 and maybe break it up?
2 different locations, yeah.
But anyway, so that's the thing. They got a bird's nest on the ground here, as an old friend of mine used to say. All they got to do is not fuck CM Punk up or let too many of their goofs get too close to him to rub off and let him do his thing with who he wants to do it with. And they're going to, and I'll be interested to see the numbers. And we mentioned this, one more thing before we go. We mentioned this earlier. They didn't tease for the average jack-off flipping around channels or doesn't live their life on the internet that any major thing was going to happen. I'll be interested to see the numbers on this just from the smart fans that obviously knew. But let's track now, beginning with Wednesday, where do the ratings go from here? Because they should, once that this word gets out amongst the people who are only in the WWE universe but have been waiting for CM Punk to come back over the next couple weeks, I expect them to pick up maybe 100, 200,000. You would think they would almost have to, wouldn't you?
I think coming out of last night where CM Punk, he's still trending on Twitter as of this morning. The clips, the photos, the buzz.
He's almost as popular as me.
Everything is going around right now. A lot of fans that were not familiar with AEW may be getting exposed to it now. A lot of fans that haven't watched wrestling in a while may be getting exposed to something new now. We said it before. AEW has tremendous momentum. And right now, even with stuff that we don't like and with some stuff that we do like, it's a really fascinating time. The next several months are going to be really interesting.
And that sadly is actually the danger. Well, not sadly, but let's be honest. That's actually this is the more nervous part of it as well. Yes, it's going to be interesting, exciting a lot now because you're kind of getting into the phase. So obviously that's going to be exciting. It's going to be interesting, obviously, over the next few months. But it's also going to be, sadly, where a lot more of the criticism is going to come in because CM Punk's fan base, or those who are fans of what CM Punk can bring to AEW, are really going to have their eyes glued on this. And that's where a lot of your critiques and criticism stuff's going to come from. And a lot of these guys in the, the upper ranks, if you will, of AEW management, they have to be able to take that on the chin. They're not everything they're going to do, people are going to like. They kind of know what that feels like now, but I'm sure anybody in the wrestling business or sports entertainment knows what that is. But with CM Punk especially amongst CM Punk fans, they're going to want him to be presented a certain type of way. And if he has even a nugget, a nugget of the AEW quote unquote bullshit on him, they're gonna be highly pissed off. So they have to just let him go out there and be him, and everybody else just kind of work around it. If they do that, like I said, this could be the start of I don't know if I'd go as far as calling it a renaissance, but it would be the first time where they could make a real push at putting out something that's an amazing product. And I don't mean to disrespect anything or everything they've done up to this point. Because this concept, this idea of competing with Vince and competing with the WWE, it kind of needs to stop. I'm not saying because they can't do it. I'm saying it needs to stop. You need to, because the more that you're focused on Vince, right, the more Vince is winning. Because that's what WCW tried to do. That's what ECW to some degree tried to do. That's what a lot of these guys did. And you saw what ended up happening in the end, because that's Vince's advantage. That's Vince McMahon's advantage. Sorry, can't talk. That's what Vince McMahon's advantage is to have your focus be on trying to beat him instead of putting out just a great product, something that makes him either be nervous of it, he'll never live long enough to say be envious of it. Even if he did live long enough, he wouldn't admit that. Jim's already said it. Just focus on putting out something that can show him up. Because if nothing else, Vince respects hard work, certainly. And you having a lot of talent is all well and good. But if you can actually outwork Vince, that right there is better than ever beating him. And even Vince would tell you that. So as long as they're slowly but surely putting a lot of pieces together of what is the overall puzzle of AEW, if they even have an idea of what it is. But they've been handed one of the great pieces of wrestling / sports entertainment. From a wrestling standpoint, they have a great opportunity to bring actual wrestling fans back in, just off the draw of CM Punk, and then the people that either he works with or the people who are showcased may get some of those fans invested in some of these other talents that AEW has. If they play their cards right, everybody can benefit, everybody can win. You need to stop focusing on Vince. You need to get your fucking head out of your ass when it comes to your own ego. I'm not making that statement towards anybody specifically. I'm just saying in general. But ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get to the main event, because I've been milking this long enough. Let's go ahead and get into our main event, which is Jim Cornette reviews CM Punk's AEW debut in Chicago on Rampage. Like I said, the links will be all down in the description. Let's go.
Well, it wasn't the way I would have done it. It was actually a lot better. It was perfect. Wait a minute. Hold on here. There we go. Because I don't have enough people here to clap. I'm alone with the clap today. But how do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I said it wasn't the way I would have done it, and I said it was better, and here's why. I think I told you on a phone last week or whenever. Obviously, everybody was pretty certain he was going to be there. The question was, he's going to be there, but how and to do what, right? And I said, I wonder how this surprise is going to be sprung, is going to be revealed or unveiled, or what manner is he going to make the debut? And I'm thinking to myself, what I would have done was, since they know what the surprise is, surprise them in the way they get the surprise, make it build to some moment, and then and they couldn't hear the fucking music after that anyway, but I realized two things. Number one, Punk knows his hometown better and realized that how long he's been gone, they didn't need to do anything else. And secondly, also, to be honest, I would have been running a normal television program up until now. But I then, in retrospect and reflection, they've had so many surprises and shocks, and some that weren't shocks, and some that weren't surprises, and some that were flat, and some that got over whatever the fuck, that wouldn't have been unusual. That would have been business as usual. This is the first time that they've actually just had a big star show up, come out, get an ovation, do his promo, not be attacked, not be fucking mixed with miscellaneous other people, etc. You know what I'm saying. So in this case, the simplest thing that they could have done was the perfect thing. Play that music and let him come out in front of his hometown, and the babies went in the air. I haven't seen that. As a matter of fact, these people are better baby throwers than when Cena came out, a few weeks ago, and we said, oh my God, the babies stuck in the rafters. They never came down. And a guy was crying, and
I'm sure there were multiple people crying, actually.
Well, yeah, but
you can see some of the pictures on Twitter. If you, for anybody who wants to look, there is more than just one guy. There's at least half a dozen, if not more. I mean, there's just, if you just think about just the guys in general we saw, there's probably like half a dozen. There's probably at least 2 or 3 dozen women out there that are crying, kids as well. It meant a lot. It meant a lot.
And on camera, even, but people were crying. Punk milked it. He's obviously thrilled to be there. You can tell it's emotional.
Now, that one part, it doesn't bother me because, Jim looks at it from the idea of what wrestling's supposed to be. I wish he didn't say he milked it. I wish he went out there and said he just let it happen. And they reacted to him in a way that would be expected. Maybe not expected. In a way that seemed genuine. Or seemed authentic. Or seemed real. I understand using the term milk it is a great way for him to rationalize it and convey it to smart fans. I get that. I understand that 100%. I just wish at that particular moment he didn't use that term. I wish he just, not that I'm offended or anything. I'm just saying I wish he would have just been like, if it came across as real, it felt real. But it is what that's just a small critique on something that probably is not even that serious.
He dives into the crowd, and they actually didn't part and let him fucking drop on his face. They caught him. He ran out of fucking song. It took him so long to get to the ring because people wouldn't stop loving on him. Not that you could hear it anyway. After they were waiting, we now know that Chicago can name that tune in one note. And then you couldn't hear it after that, except when they were singing it at the top of their lungs. When they weren't fucking chanting CM Punk. I've never seen a show have to go to break before the guy gets in the ring because the people won't stop screaming. Did Hogan ever get, and I mean, let's face it, there have been huge pops in history, but this was a perfect storm. A hometown, a crowd like that, we know the AEW faithful are very motivated, and a major star that they not only haven't seen in 7 years, but they weren't sure they were ever going to get to see again. I don't know that something like this has ever been done in wrestling with all of those.
Great point with that, because remember, all of this was based off of a rumor. Even though there were confirmations by like news networks later on, not wrestling news, I mean actual legitimate news. I think one sports network, I'm not sure if it was ESPN or not, had even confirmed it by accident, but they confirmed it either which way. But off of a rumor, this is how this all came about. This is a type of circumstance that I don't think will ever be. It's so real that I don't think you'll be able to ever duplicate it. You know what I mean? I think for the first time in a long time, ladies and gentlemen, you guys saw a situation that is so real. It's not a matter of, and that's why no one's talked about it, or talked about it as, was this a work? You know what I'm saying? It's just, you can't plan for stuff like this, I don't think. And have it come off as real as it was, you can't do stuff like that.
Those pieces in place at the same time. But they come back from the break, they're still fucking going crazy. And the opening line I thought was perfect. You know, it's almost like a Sally Field at the Oscars. You love me, you really love me. Hey, you make a kid feel like Britt Baker in Pittsburgh. But remember when I said that when Cena came out, the people went batshit and he put on a promo clinic? He did put on a promo clinic, but he was still doing a promo. He's just the best at it. But this was because of all of the happenings and all of the events, and because Punk has the verbal ability to convey this, and he followed the Jerry Jarrett motif to the letter that I've always said Jerry Jarrett told me, you don't just start out by working people. You tell them the truth as long as you can about things that they know to be true, so that they're with you and they believe you're telling the truth because you are. And then when you branch off, if you don't take too far of a right turn or a left turn, they're with you for the whole thing when you throw a little bit of the business into it. And the people were emotional and he was emotional, because how could you not be emotional with getting that kind of fucking ovation? And also, he's obviously motivated. He wouldn't be doing this if he wouldn't, to come back and do what he likes to do for an obscene amount of money, I'm sure. And so this wasn't as much of a promo as much as this star that they love coming out and having a personal conversation with each and every one of them, which John was entertaining and John's very well spoken and John's a great performer, but that wasn't that. I don't know that he would have been having that conversation with each and every one of those people unless it was SummerSlam and he's promoting a show.
Well, I mean, that goes back to the whole hometown feel. And I think you going in and seeing, if I remember correctly, a sold-out event, a sold-out arena means a lot as well. Because you got to think, though, too, and I think this is something that a lot of people who've been watching WWE for a long time know this, that when you got into that whole PG era, even though when they were panning the cameras across the audience, it looks full, it's really not full. Not like how it was during the Attitude Era. Not to say that the Attitude Era is sold out all the time, but you know what I mean. And so it's probably been a long time that he's walked into a big venue and seen it completely and totally sold out. And yet again, based on a rumor, and then more importantly, it's home. It doesn't get yet again. Let's go ahead and remove the business part of it out of there for a minute. It's home. You know what I'm saying? These are people who even if they don't all know him personally, they certainly know of him. They may have even gone to some of the haunts or some of the places that he's been known to frequent. They have followed his career to some extent. Like there is as much personal investment by the fans that night than there was for CM Punk himself. Yet again, and that kind of gives it like the perfect storm type thing. When John Cena had his big pop a few weeks ago, that's business, and that's how. And maybe John Cena cares, maybe you don't. Who gives a shit? But the point is that is business. But for CM Punk and for this right here, it actually meant something. Despite the obscene amount of money that he may have been paid for it, it actually means something. You know what I'm saying? There's something genuine, I believe, when it comes down to that. You know what I mean? There's something genuine about it, especially doing it then at that time. It just holds more weight. You know what I mean? In a lot of ways, it might even trump the sentimental and the emotional aspect of it. May even trump business to some degree. But, just throwing that out there.
But Punk wanted to say a few of those things. So the point is, I've said this so many years. This is a classic example of it. The more genuine something can be in the wrestling business, the less you have to gimmick it. And I was glad. And again, except for, well, it just so happened that old Darby Allin and Sting were up there in the rafters watching. Okay, and we'll go with the moment. But they didn't gimmick it up. Nobody interfered. Nobody interrupted. He didn't, on the whole way that he did this thing was perfect, including the sit cross-legged in the ring, the sharp comments about the place that got him sick in the first place, and he took his time because he had him eating out of his hand. I mean, when they pop for you sitting down in the ring, they're with you, right? It was conversational and emotional. And as I said, genuine. At one point, it was like he was running for office. This could have been a campaign speech. I don't know who the mayor of Chicago is currently, but they might have competition. And is this the simplest segment that AEW has ever done on their television program? And it obviously was the best television they've ever done. What do you think?
You hit on the exact thing I thought about as soon as I watched it. I'll just say right at the top, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was great. I loved it. It couldn't have gone any better. It's exactly how anyone could have hoped it would have gone. I thought of that old Bruce Lee quote, "Simplicity is the key to brilliance." It was exactly what it needed to be. I said it on Twitter. They had to start that show with that. It had to start like that. It started exactly how it should have. The people went crazy. And I went into it watching the last segment on SmackDown, which was a face-to-face promo with Reigns and Cena. And that was really good. And of course, those are two of the true stars of WWE. I went from that into the CM Punk thing, and it was amazing because here's another guy at that level, if not beyond that level with this audience right now. And it was just such major star power. And the other thing is, we talked about it with the Cena and Reigns face-to-face, I think last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. I forget what it was. And we talked about it with some of the recent AEW matches that have gone a long time. The matches that go a long time to us feel like they've gone a long time and through commercial breaks, and will they ever end? The segments with the guys that truly have the presence and the aura and the charisma and the star power, whether it's Cena and Reigns or Punk, those segments can go a half hour and it goes by in 5 seconds. That CM Punk segment was so good, I didn't want it to end. I actually thought when he sat down, oh, this is great. Just go the whole hour with him sitting in the ring. It'll be the greatest thing ever. But it was perfect. And AEW deserves major kudos for this. CM Punk deserves major kudos for this because he obviously has a major say in everything he's doing. This couldn't have been done better. And this, I think, was the single greatest thing in AEW history, the single best moment in AEW history. And one last comment, All Out sold out, or All In, I guess, sold out years ago, the original one. Like you always say, crowdfunding, people want to support the underdog, people got behind the Bucks and Omega and Cody, and it sold out. CM Punk sold out a building on the rumor he was going to be. And if that didn't tell you, and I know it's his hometown, if that segment didn't show you, beyond Jericho even, beyond Cody, certainly Omega and the Bucks. I think even beyond Daniel Bryan, Punk's a level of star they don't have there. And what a brilliant debut. 10 out of 10. Whatever you want me to say. 5 stars, 7 stars. What's the limit now? 7.5 stars.
Well, wait a minute. Now, is there a new rule? It can only get 8 stars if it's in the United Center?
Maybe
Tokyo Dome's got some competition.
That's right.
You said something a minute ago. You said, you watched Reigns and Cena, and then you went to the Punk promo, and he's on their level, maybe even beyond. There's nobody right now on CM Punk's level in the wrestling business. And here's why. Because, again, how can I miss you if you won't go away? When you get a guy that's really over and you take him away from people and they don't know when or if they're going to get to see him again, I'm not trying to downplay this, because first the guy has to be really over. It has to be a major star. But remember, even when Daniel Bryan,
let me cut in real quick, because he's still trying to get it out, and I get it. Going back to Brian's point about having how when you're invested in a segment, you don't think your mental clock kind of shuts off. You're not thinking about, oh man, this is dragging out, or oh man, will this match end? When you really give a shit, you don't care. You're always left wanting more, which is something that CM Punk was able to do, and obviously in a great way, an amazing way, I should say. Like I said, whether they're able to capitalize off that or not is going to be the real question. But still, as it pertains to what his segment, not versus the John Cena Roman Reigns segment, we should just look at it as one bleeding into another, so to speak. I think it worked out. I think it gave people a chance to go ahead and watch what's already, most of them are already watching, or at least have already turned on. And then you go into the CM Punk situation, and it's like, there's your comparison right there. If you even want to make a comparison, you could just come off of one really good promo and then go into a great promo, or you can come off of a great promo and go into an amazing promo, or maybe even, I don't know if I'd want to go as far as calling it a once-in-a-lifetime promo, but certainly a great promo that's out right now to the promo that the business needed. Or what, maybe if you don't even want to go that far, the promo that people needed to hear. Maybe, yet again, it's business, sure, but let's remove the business aspect out of it for a second and say, this is what fans needed to hear. This is the reinforcement, if you would, not even reinforcement, this is the confirmation that people wanted and needed to hear and needed to see and needed to feel. You know what I mean? Because for all intents and purposes, the business, in air quotes, has taken such a massive fucking hit over the years, that you have a bunch of untapped. There's an untapped demographic out there who want to come back and watch it, but they don't want to watch what's out there. And now CM Punk kind of gives them a reason to do so. But on top of that, if you want to go even further, maybe, just maybe, it gives them a reason to go back and look at maybe AEW and be, or not AEW, but look at WWE and be like, okay, AEW is gonna be on soon. Let me see what WWE is doing and see. And try to get the comparison, just to start the conversation. Because if you follow, like I'm gonna call it wrestling Twitter, if you follow anybody on there, or you just follow what some of the conversations that are going on, you can tell those are people who really give a shit, and that are real fans and are invested. And even those who would, and they admit, some of them do, that hey, I'm not watching the product all the time. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean I don't have something to say. Or it doesn't mean that my opinion isn't valid. You know what I'm saying? And it brings more and more people into that conversation, which pushes the idea that, you know what, let me watch a little bit of this, or let me catch up on a little bit of this to see what's going on. because everybody wants to be part of the conversation. And in doing that, in that more social realm, if you will, you kind of have to sit there and you got to take in the product to do so. I hate calling it that, but it is what it is. You got to take in the product to do that. So yet again, it benefits all around. Yet again, it's not just what the performer does, but it's also what the fans and the audience are doing. And there's a lot that goes into it on both sides. If any of you guys are watching anybody who goes over wrestling content on YouTube, for example, you see it. You see it. You see, you know what I'm saying, what it takes. You see what the passion that people have for it. And win, lose, or draw on whether you agree with them or not, you do know and or understand that these people care. And that means something. And and even if you feel that the organization itself doesn't give a shit or doesn't give enough of a shit, you know that the fans still do. So even if you feel that Vince or Tony Khan or whoever have burned you, at least amongst the social aspect of it, there's an understanding. And there's a camaraderie there. And then with most wrestlers, you can actually speak to them. You can actually, most of them that get tweeted, they'll tweet back at you. And you can kind of, well, I mean, don't go out there and fucking vent all of your bullshit on them, but as it pertains to your gripes. But you can talk about some of your concerns, and they'll give you a real answer back more often than not. So, yet again, that's kind of what another aspect that I think that CM Punk has brought back into this, the more social aspect, especially for those who are longtime CM Punk fans who haven't been paying attention to the current product, whether WWE or AEW respectfully, and maybe bringing them back into the conversation will bring them back into the product. Maybe.
For example, has been on television fairly often over the last however long it's been since he got cleared to come back. And the people were batshit crazy to see him when he first came back because he had been gone and you didn't know whether you're going to see him again because of health reasons, right? Edge, same thing. And he was majorly over when he came back because, you know, there's a return to triumph story. But with Punk, he was attractive to that audience anyway. He was over with that audience anyway. And I think, with more than anybody else, like I said, we've been seeing Bryan Danielson. Now, you know, with more than anybody else, people were convinced that maybe Punk was just not coming back because it was coming to time where he either was or wasn't. And also, Edge left on top because of the injury. I don't know if Edge at the time was more over than Punk was when he left. I think Punk pretty much went out on top. You know, it like I said, any of these other guys, when you take a big star and you deprive people of them, and then you allow them to, you know, to have that again, that's great. And it adds to it that Punk's really over, and it adds to it his verbal ability.
It adds to it that he feels genuine to people.
Yes.
I'm talking about outside of the ring. You see him on Twitter, you hear him comment on things. He tells you what he thinks. I find I agree with him almost every single time. He's one of the few people in wrestling I think actually gets it outside of the ring and inside of the ring. But, you know, Bob Backlund, Brian Solomon, remember he recently researched
yes.
Bob Backlund was away almost the exact same amount of time. And that entire time Bob Backlund was away, other than the smart fans watching him in UWF, the fans said, wow, whatever happened to Bob Backlund? It was never, I want Bob Backlund back. Bob Backlund has to come back. He never would have got that kind of pop. CM Punk is a very unique.
But now, come on, let's
star.
not even try to make that comparison.
He was the world champion in the company, and he left right after, 6 months later?
Well, and with all respect to Bob, I've never had crossword with Bob. I love Bob, and Bob, Mr. Backlund as a heel was much more over with the WWF audience in the 90s than Bob Backlund, the All-American Boy. Well, he almost left as champion by popular demand of the fans. Remember? It was a grudge deal that Vince Sr., you know, was going to get him over no matter what. And keep him there because people had said that it would never work. So he made it work. But Vince Jr. changed that particular equation probably for the better. That's one of the things he did to improve things, is move away from that direction. But anyway.
And I'll say this too. And I put this on Twitter, and some people got upset with it, and a lot of people agreed with it. Unfortunately, the next segment was a tag team match that wasn't the kind of thing I like, but I said, and then it turns back into AEW.
Well, let's not go there. There's a little bit more.
What I was going to say is,
all right.
I actually have, for the first time in a long time, faith in a wrestler doing good things and doing the right things. We'll see what happens. It's happened before where my heart gets broken, but I think CM Punk has shown over his career a level of quality control that others may not have. And that segment was so good. I have a little bit of faith that this may be a great thing for AEW, for us enjoying AEW.
Oh, it's definitely going to make more palatable whatever he's involved in. I will say that. And going back to the interview, and I mean, we beat the horse to death on this, but the point is it was a perfect storm, but Punk had to be over to begin with. He left on top. He's got a unique connection with the audience. They know he's genuine because a lot of that was completely genuine. And then he branched off into working by challenging Darby Allin. A lot of people are going to say, well, what the fuck? I'm not opposed to this because, I mean, if he puts Darby Allin over in his first match, then we're going to have a different conversation. But if he can just basically go up a certain amount of opponents and make them look better than they have and elevate them, as we used to say, and at the same time go to a clearly defined match that's going to, because obviously CM Punk versus Darby Allin is not the biggest money match that they can put together for a pay-per-view. But since they said this is a long-term deal, then imagine this. They're probably going to let him get a few wins first. He's not going to get the FTR treatment. But anyway, the challenge, go ahead.
What did you think? There was a little comment he made in the promo, and it could be read or heard different ways, and I don't have it in front of me. I'm just paraphrasing. It was something along the lines of, along this journey, some of you are going to be disappointed with my personal decisions.
No, no, the way I remember it, and we can reference this, but I heard him say, some of you have been with some of my personal decisions.
Yeah, that's what I thought I heard too. I thought it was really like some of the stuff some of the decisions he had made, prior to this situation here. But I mean, I might have heard it wrong too. But I thought it was like past decisions that he had made. Also, with the promo that the program that they have him set up with, I don't know if they're really going to have Punk put that guy over. I don't think Punk needs to. I don't think Punk needs to put this guy over for him to for this guy to somewhat be elevated. So I don't know. I'm anxious to see how they do that, obviously, but I don't think they need to do that, to be honest with you. I don't think they need Punk to have to put anybody over anytime soon just for those people to be elevated. I think just being in a program with him is enough. Is more than enough, to be honest with you. We'll see how that plays. But I did want to kind of say something on that.
Okay. I only watched it one time, and I know other people have watched it multiple. I thought it was will be, as in, hey, maybe down the road I'll hit one of the guys you like. Maybe down the road I'll do this or that. I didn't know how to read that. I thought
I still hold out hope that after the bloom is off the rose and familiarity breeds a little contempt, we could see a heel. But no, the way I heard it was that he said, I want to say that some of you along the line, or however that phrase turned, may have been upset with some of the personal choices that I've made.
Okay. I heard it wrong. Again, I only watched it once.
Whether it was, was he apologizing maybe for an ill-fated UFC detour, or was he saying, well, some of you may be mad that I left wrestling or that I've, left the WWE, whatever, but I took it in the past tense.
And I wouldn't even say ill-fated UFC thing. You know what? This guy went out there, gambled on himself, gave it a shot. It didn't go perfectly, but he gave it a fucking shot.
That's what I said at the time. I said, okay, he fucking did it. And here's the thing. If Brock Lesnar had gone back and just fucking done job after job, that would have killed him in the wrestling business. CM Punk's whole appeal as a wrestler was not built on being a tough shooter.
It was built on being genuine.
It was built on being a personality And his personality is built on being him. So it wasn't like Brock Lesnar going to get, because a lot of people have said, well, he's shown everybody the business was phony. Well, that horse left the barn a long time ago. Even I'll admit that. But the fact that a pro wrestler did fight in the UFC, which that's rare air for even professional fighters, that's not bad since that wasn't his gimmick. It would have killed Brock deader than 4 o'clock because that's his whole aura. And and Brock is not the wordsmith to bring, people back around. Even if Heyman is, that he's got to have an indestructible beast. That was not Punk's whole vibe. But
and I just want to say too, I regularly, as people hear, I kill AEW when I think they do bad stuff, which happens a lot. It's not that I'm a hater, as the kids may say. It's that I like good stuff. I also got to put over when they do it right.
As my mother used to say, I'd rather eat good food than bad food any day. That's a Ghost of Mr. Chicken line, but go ahead.
Once again, I just want to say this could not have been done better. And Tony Khan, I think, did this better than Vince McMahon would have. And this was just perfection. And this was quite a moment. Where do you think this ranks among?
And they let it breathe, too.
That's it. They didn't rush it. The commentators didn't say anything. They stayed out of it. That was perfect. Can you imagine if you had to listen to Excalibur and Mark Henry and those guys talk during this?
Oh, well, JR was, I guarantee you, JR had his hands spread out in front of all of them. That's his fucking signal, lay out, right?
But I thought this was just perfection. And where do you rank this amongst modern wrestling moments? I mean, it's such a unique moment.
Let me get to the one thing.
Here, let me jump in really fast. As it pertains to the UFC run, like I said, you have to give him a lot of credit. He was brave enough to do it. He took lumps. You got to give him, you got to respect him for that. What I do want to see though, as we kind of get an idea of what CM Punk's going to do in the ring, is incorporate some of his UFC training, if you will, into his wrestling a little bit. I'd like to see some of that. Don't be wrong. I'm not wanting him to go out there and put guys into Kimuras and shit, or Cobra clutch chokes and shit like that. I mean, it'd be kind of cool to see it happen. But I mean, I'd like to see some of what he's learned from mixed martial arts and incorporate that into his wrestling arsenal. That's all I'm trying to say. I'd like to see that, at least a little bit of it. I think it gives him more versatility, and I think that shows a level of growth that has come with age, with his maturity, with the way that he views wrestling in general and how he chooses to approach it. I think that's something that I'd like to see. I'm not sure necessarily if that's something we need to see. I think it should be something we want to see. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Thing that I thought I was going to have to knock, and then that turned around. The only thing after the challenge and everything, September 5th, it all out. And he said, it's a long-term deal. I'm going to have plenty of time to talk to you and blah, blah, blah. The line, I'm back. And I thought, that just seemed like he bobbled on the dismount.
No,
and then he came back and said, oh, and by the way, on the way out, free ice cream bars. Oh, fuck, that's perfect. It's an Andy Kaufman fucking deal. Instead of milk and cookies, he gave him ice cream bars, which is the fucking callback, as the kids say, to the promo he did where he wanted ice cream bars back and no purple M&Ms or whatever all the conditions he set out were in the WWF. And then and as soon as they hear that, yay! And then the music again, and then they're screaming, like Mussolini! And just a cult of personality.
Okay. Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Please don't start singing.
They were screaming at the top of their lungs. It was fucking wonderful.
The line, I'm back, I took it, because again, I said this the other day to you, so much of this, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing. This is probably a good way to utilize something like this. To me, it looks like so much of this is based around the way the ESPN did the Michael Jordan Last Dance documentary in Chicago in the same, the same place. And when he said, I'm back, when Michael Jordan returned from retirement before that last run, that was his quote.
Well, and I'm not even saying that but I'm just saying after that promo that he gave, it didn't seem like there was a go home line emphasis on it. I'm not saying the material was, it didn't pop to me because that wasn't the actual last thing he was going to say. I didn't know he had and one more thing. He came back and the ice cream, but there you go. So he didn't, it's not the material, just the inflection or the way it would be delivered. I thought, and then, okay, here we go. Now we've left them all the way up again.
So where do you rank this, or how do you see this amongst all the great wrestling moments that we've actually seen amongst everything else in the last 10 years, 15 years?
Oh, God. I thought you were talking ever, because I was going to have to struggle back to think. In the last...
Since the turn of the century, since 2000, since 2001.
Oh, my God. I forgot I've been a part of 2 centuries now.
How'd you like the Ring of Honor thing? Then I left Ring of Honor, and I left pro wrestling, and now I'm back to pro wrestling. What'd you think of that? I wish that AEW, the rest of the product was more of a banner carrier for pro wrestling, but I like that also because, again, he's bringing those people back into his roots and what he truly loved about this that he did, and he's bringing them into it. He's back in the mindset. He's bringing them in. I like that. I wish that more of AEW stood up to that description, but maybe we'll work on it now. Maybe they'll have a good influence at this point. But where do I rank it? I mean, goddamn, hardly what was that interview that Bryan Danielson did? God, how long ago was that now? Was that almost 10 years ago? It's been a while. Hogan Rock, that moment, that match is one of those moments that the crowd reaction and everything was just perfect. What else? I mean, the other big AEW moments, I guess, would be Moxley debuting. No, seriously. I mean, all things, despite what you think or I think, in terms of AEW moments.
Damn, Jim, tell me how you really feel. Holy shit.
No, I'm scoffing at that. That did not compare in any way to the level of this, and I would scoff about someone else that didn't compare to the level of this. I mean, as far as matches and moments are different things, but at the same time, I don't know of a lot of matches that have gotten over with people and made this much difference and important. And this is a turning point type of thing. If
they capitalize on it.
This is starting to get to a world-class wrestling level of this is getting so hot now, they just don't fuck it up. Just don't fuck it up. It just the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. Just don't fuck this up. And you're running along well. And of course, we know where that went in Dallas a few years later, but at this point, just don't fuck this up.
Do you think this is the best moment in Punk's career? Of course, he had the pipe bomb promo, winning the title, kissing goodbye to Vince McMahon. Maybe also the locker room discussion where he said, I don't have to work with you. You have to work with me. Well, yeah, Where do you think this ranks amongst? Is this the best moment of CM Punk's career by far?
It's the best one we're going to see in public because those backroom meetings, however many there may have been, probably would have been great if we could stream them live or whatever, but we'll never see those. So in public, yeah, it has to be, because this is proof he did something that nobody else has done. He was able to sell out an NBA building on the rumor of just his appearance there. He's stayed away, and that's what I was going to say earlier. Even the guys that come back, Cena comes back, but he comes back from the movies and he comes back from TV shows. I've seen more of John Cena over the last 5 years accidentally than when I was watching in the wrestling business and he was on wrestling, because he's on everything. The Rock, obviously, people go batshit insane. If he were to come back and hopefully he'll do that WrestleMania with Reigns, and that'll be a big thing, but he's everywhere. Punk has done a few of these, TV shows and films and etc., but he hasn't been he's a quiet man, a very quiet man. Like that George Carlin line. Who are you going to watch? The quiet guy in the bar sitting there calmly drinking his beer, or the guy that walks in the front door swinging a chainsaw over his head screaming, I'll kill every motherfucker in the place. But Punk likes to be private, and so there's been some mystery, and he's built anticipation and longing. So it's just, as long as they don't gum him up, and I have a feeling that he will. I mean, I don't know that I will agree with everybody that he wants to have a dream match with, but I don't think that he'll be out there with fucking, minions with face shields spraying cold spray on his fucking opponent's shoulder or whatever in the middle of the match, or
Well, he's an adult. That's why.
attempting to do the fucking floor exercise at the goddamn, Romanian Olympics. So they just have to not fuck this up.
And I have faith in CM Punk, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
He has shown quality control. So I have faith in him. But all we could say is this. I mean, you agree with me, right? This couldn't have been any better.
No, I don't see how. I mean, maybe if he'd had somebody come and hand everybody the ice cream bar so they didn't have to walk to get it, that's the only way it could have been.
That's the only way it could have been better, because I saw the ice cream bar when they were eating it. Taz went to work on that thing right away when they were eating it, and it looked like, sadly, that it wasn't. I was hoping AEW mimicked the original WWF ice cream bars from the late 80s, which were the greatest ice cream bars ever, but it appeared to be just a ice cream bar wrapped in a chocolate casing, but I'll see.
I never ate a WWF ice cream bar in my life.
They were the greatest fucking ice cream bars. I grew up on a beach, so all day you're on the beach and you get hungry, you get thirsty, and all the kids would go over by the entrance. There would be the ice cream man, or we'd call him the Ices man, because it was really less about ice cream, more about ices, Marino's Italian ices, and just great stuff. And they always had the WWF bars, and girls, kids who didn't like wrestling, they were the biggest hit because they were delicious, but also each one came with a trading card. And if you got a Hulk Hogan on the ice cream bar, you also got a free ice cream. So if you got Honky Tonk Man, you were disappointed. But if you got Hulk Hogan before you ate him, you also got a free one, so you get two. And then you go back in the ocean and swim.
I don't know if I'd want to put Honky in my mouth, but that's just me.
That's kind of funny. That's a little bit out of my time, but my initial question was going to be, I thought that whoever was champion at that time, you could also get a free. You also got a free ice cream bar aside from Hogan. I didn't know it was just Hogan. I thought whoever were champion, or whoever were champions at that time, you got a free ice cream bar. So that's good to know. I didn't know that, and I'm curious if anybody does know who made those. Was it Good Humor, or who was it that produced those ice cream bars? I don't know if those are even in circulation anymore, but I know I've never had one, so I mean, I'd be willing to go out of my way to try it. Certainly. Anywho, let's go ahead and close up shop here. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and get back to our usual background. Thank you very much to Jim Cornette and the great Brian Lass for excellent insight on all of that. That was great. That was actually really cool. And as for my final takes on it, I'm glad to have seen it. I think I'm glad to have seen other people on Twitter and the jubilation and how they felt about the situation. I think it's good all around. I wish I had a little more faith. I'm talking about myself here. I wish I had a little bit more faith in AEW. I actually kind of feel a certain type of way saying, I hope they don't fuck it up. You know what I mean? I hope they don't fuck it up, because if there is any stumble, any slip or fall, we're gonna put that blame squarely on AEW and not CM Punk, because CM Punk, he has an understanding. He has a vision. He understands what he wants. And if there is any type of if there's a hiccup, if you will, it's going to be on AEW's part, and they're going to take all of that blame. And so it really just comes down to just don't screw this up. Don't screw this up. You know what I mean? Like you already had Tony Khan's a big fan. There's a lot of fans already over there. You've brought even more fans in. You have brought even more wrestlers who are watching it now. I mean, they were probably always watching it, but now they're really watching it and they're being vocal about it. Hopefully they don't get punished too badly for it. You have a lot of attention, as we saw in video number 2. There's a lot of momentum. This was a great experience. I just hope they don't fuck it up. I guess that's really what it just comes down to. Like, you know what I'm saying? I hope they don't fuck it up. I hope we get some great programming out of it. And this only cements... This will only continue to cement what the CM Punk's legacy, I should say, will end up being. Because it's still being written. He's not done, clearly. So, you know, I think this is a great way of doing it. And if he can... If his roots kind of rub off on some of these other guys, maybe some of that more zanier stuff can turn into something a bit more polished and continue to evolve and be something that's just not one major gimmick. Not to shit on AEW and say that's all it is, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he takes it serious enough and appreciates it. CM Punk does. Takes it serious enough and appreciates it not only as a business but as his craft, that I would hope other people also feel the same and approach it as such. You know what I'm saying? Time will tell. Either way, thank you guys for coming out and hearing me out. I very much appreciate it. Like I said, the links to the videos that I had gone over are down in the description, as well as information for Brian, for Jim themselves, and so on and so forth. So, big ups to everybody all around. This is Getting Over versus Being Put Over. And see you guys on the next one. Later, people.